computer. So, oh.
Did you see the message from Judith?
I haven't seen the message from Judith, no.
She sent me one saying that Zoom has decided to update. She'll be with us as soon as it's completed.
Well, there you go. That we would have almost been on double figures. God, there's no doubt about it. We are, you know, it's there she is. She's coming. Realising that all this is on the recording now, of course, just to show I really prefer. But it's all right because I can edit it out later. So there we go. Hello, Judith. Hopefully you can hear us, and we're glad to have you. And the update is sorted. And look, there's another look at this. Do you know what? Timekeeping. But hang on, she's gone. Who's gone? We had 6 just now. I've let one more person in, and we've still got 6. I know who's gone. My wife has gone.
She's had enough here.
I know.
Zoom decided to update just as I was joining in.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, yeah,
Right.
Simon.
Hello, Judith.
Zoom decided it needed to update, and I just thought there's nothing I can do. So I'm sorry I'm late.
And it always does it when you turn on. And what do you want to do when you turn on? You actually want to use it, don't you?
Yeah.
You update now.
Yeah, wouldn't it be so much better if it said before next time you use it, do it at the end of the next meeting?
The chance of anyone turning it on for an update have got to be very slim. But anyway, I'm going to edit. I'm going to start now. If you're all sitting comfortably, let's pretend it's Jack and Ori, shall we? Then I shall begin. So, welcome to this week's show. This week's show, back in after we've missed a week, which was absolutely terrible. But what a week! Now, if you were looking out of the window on Monday, hang on, I've got to do a mute job here.
This is a father, isn't it?
Done. So, if you were looking out of your window on Monday, you would have realised it was almost daylight at night time because we had a full moon. We had the wolf moon. Now, I'm not going to say too much about it right now because there's a video coming up in a moment about the moon. I went out and shot. Well, I went out to walk the dogs and I kind of like, I've got to shoot a video. In fact, I shot 3 and this is the 3rd and best one. So we've got that coming up. We also got looking for the learning. We've got a video I shot when we went out with a granddaughter at Christmas, and we saw some robins, and we spent a little bit of time thinking about trees and what we can learn from trees. So that's going to be really cool. Now, you might have noticed on the left at the top of my screen is a fellow called John, and John is, well, we're going to have a little bit of a chat. I was going to say about John, but it's not about John. It's about John. It's about what we're going to do with John. But if we're going to have a little chat with John later, which will be dead cool. And we're going to talk about an amazing book, a book I knew about for probably over 30 years before I actually read it. So we're going to talk about that. It's the Autobiography of a Yogi by a fellow called Paramhansa Yogananda. That's a pretty cool book. We're going to have a chat about that. We'll briefly mention books on the website, and we're going to finish with part 1 of my trip up Ashdale Falls in August. Change to the published or predicted kind of like finale to the show because I had a slightly enforced change thrust upon me unexpectedly, and the video I was going to show then became the wrong video. But life's like that sometimes. Anyway, so without any further waffly ado, and actually I can see my wife moving around in the kitchen, so she may well join us again later. I'm going to go to the first video, and the first video is the one about the wolf moon. So here we go. Enjoy.
Never let you go.
You probably can't see in front of me right now. I have shadows. I actually have really bright shadows. And the reason I have a really bright shadow, even if you can't see it, is because of this, that you can see. This is the wolf moon. It's the full moon in January. And just like the Native Americans, we've taken to giving our moons names. And why not too? Full moon is important. It's full of energy. It's full of life. It's vibrant. Been awake half the night. Not tossing and turning, quite comfortable, but awake. Got up a little earlier. Comes a point where there's not a point being here. It's amazing. There is a buzz, there is an energy, there is a buzz, there is a vibrancy in this world, and quite often it's on the full moon that things will pivot, things will turn, things will change. And quite often you will get an insight. But it's funny, unless you're aware of and thinking about that full moon, you might never know quite why you've had it. Bizarre. But there you go. January 17th, full moon. Fantastic.
Never let you go.
So there you go. Wolf moon. Did you clock the way that the focus on the camera was kind of like in and out? And sometimes it was trying to focus on the moon, and sometimes it was trying to focus on the trees. You're always at the mercy when you're filming with a phone of the automatic focus. And mostly it does a pretty good job. But there are times when it does a kind of strange thing. But you know what? I kind of like the way that with that video and the moon, that the focus was kind of like swapping between the trees and the moon and the moon and the trees, which is really cool. But that's one of the things that we talk about when we go out on our five senses walks, because the moon has a massive effect on the gravity of our world. And we know this for an absolute fact because we can see it with our tides. You know, it actually gives us our tides. It pulls the seas backwards and forwards. And sometimes, depending on the position of the moon in the sky and obviously where our own world is, it has those spring tides, those neap tides, where it pulls the sea much, much further. Now, what's interesting about that is the fact that we are 70% water. So if you sort of think what the moon can do to the tides, it has an effect on us. And quite often, it's when we have a full moon that it pulls the gravity, it changes the energy in the world, and that will have an effect on us. And there are a lot of people that get seriously affected by it. You know, traditionally, back in the past, we call them lunatics, which is kind of unkind, because I think that that just shows that we have people that are more connected to this world, and we should be celebrating that, not castigating or taking the mickey or anything else. We should be celebrating that. So it's one of those to acknowledge. And it's a 4-week cycle. You know, as we said in the program just after the new year, you know, we have this natural 13-month year based on our lunar cycles. And what do? We invent a really bizarre, weird 12-month year that doesn't actually work. But there you go. So that's the moon. Now, I've mentioned in there that, you know, one of the things we do when we're out on the walks and the focus is on here is looking for the learning in the countryside, because there's so much learning out there that we can enjoy. Incidentally, if there's anything you want to contribute in the chat, please do, because it just helps me to know that, well, you're awake, to be fair. So we've got the chat box, and if there's anything there, I will go. But there's so many things we can look. Obviously, from the moon is one of them, but also from trees. And there was a classic example when we went out earlier in the year. I was with myself and my wife and our granddaughter, and I put together this little video and edited it together the other day. And well, I'm going to play it now, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. And if you've got any comments about the content, then obviously let us know, and we'll crack on to them in a minute. So here we go. This is Life Lessons from the Woods.
Never let you go.
Robin. Hello, Mr. Robin. Hello. That's it, you're waving. See you waving. Hello, Mr. Robin. Yeah, this is, look, he's waving his tail at you. Hello. Say bye-bye, Mr. Robin.
So you can come to the same woods every day, and every day you will see something different. It's one of the beauties and the magic of a wood. Now, I couldn't tell you that this is definitely a recent fall, but I don't remember seeing this tree having gone over recently. If you look, there's pretty much kind of virgin soil underneath it. There's nothing much got in there, a little bit of ivy, raining, it's dry in there. One of the most interesting things is, if you look, this tree when it was standing upright must have been at least 30, 40, maybe 50 metres tall, yeah? You see it's a slightly different colour, the tree is leaning against. But if you come back down and have a look at the size of its root ball, then you get some idea. It means to be flexible. The root ball is maybe 2 metres in diameter, and yet the tree itself, maybe 40 metres, 50 metres tall, can survive many, many gales. And in fact, it's had to have done to have got that big. How do they do it? They do it by being flexible. And there's a massive life lesson, because we all have to weather the storm from time to time. All of us, everything.
Do we?
One of those facts of life. But what's amazing when you think about it, an awful lot of storm uses up an awful lot of energy. So it can never ever last forever. So we weather the storm, whether it's wind, whether it's potential, whether it's emotion. And when it's blown through, we stand back up again. What awesomely cool is that? Life lessons from our own world. Simon Pollard, coming at you from the woods.
Never let you go.
Right. Apologies for the background noise. One of our members joined with their microphone on, and I can't mute them when there's a video playing. So I apologise for that one. But there you go. It's really cool, because if you just look at what goes on in our world, there are some amazing, amazing things that we can see. And as I say, fallen trees, when you think about it, you've got a massive, great, tall, expansive tree, tiny little root ball, and yet they manage to stay up for most of the time. And the other one that I remember years ago, we were staying on the Isle of Guernsey, and it was blowing a hoolie, and even the lampposts were doing this. But none of them fell over. So, yeah, Really, really cool. And that's another of those things that we learn when we're out on the walks. You know, we look at and see what's there, and we see what we can pick up on, what it might mean, and how we can actually implement that and take it and put it into our own lives. Now, it's funny. If you've been on one of our walks, you'll know. But when we get people actually out on the walks, then things happen. And there's been some amazing things happen in the last probably 3 months. We've been taking the walks. We realised a change of direction for the marketing. We realised who we actually can help. That was pretty massive. We had one day that was pretty cool. But one of the events that happened, I think it was back in October. It was actually on a taster day, and John, who's with us now, was on that taster event. And afterwards, we were talking, and he said, "You need to set up a CIC." And I'm like, "A what?" He said, "A CIC, a charitably incorporated company. You know, it's like a limited company, but it doesn't make profit directly. And if you're a CIC, you can apply for grants." Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm thinking I can do that. I'm not quite sure how, when, why, whatever else. And then a little while later, he says, "Well, I've got my CIC myself." He said, "Educational Life. Maybe we could run some events through Educational Life because it kind of fits with what we do and everything else." And I'm like, "Okay, that seems pretty cool." Because John, you know, came out, he got it and all the rest of it. And then the next time I met him, he said, "Don't do events through our CIC." He said, "Why don't you come on the board of directors?" And I'm like, "I don't know about that. Not sure." Came away, had a chat with my groovy wife, had a think about it. I went back and we said, "Yeah, that makes sense. I'd like to do that." And then so we got our heads together with John's wife, Claire. And we've had several meetings, and we're applying for grants and bits and pieces now. And we're talking to various different charitable places. We've just set up a meeting today with Porchlight, which is really exciting. But one of the things that came out of those conversations was, "John, how would you like to help me co-host the show?" The idea being that John can come in with some bits and pieces from Educational Life. And also when I can't be here, and there are times when I can't be here, it means the show can still rock and roll because John's here. So John's here now, and if between the two of us we can manage to unmute him, and in fact, if I press that button, he can unmute himself.
Hello.
Hello, John.
Hello.
It's nice to have you here. It's going to be nice to have somebody else who can occasionally do some talking, because much as I can talk a little bit, it's nice to be able to stop and maybe, you know, be able to get a little bit of banter going as well, which would be dead cool. But if I haven't told everybody the entire story, would you like to actually kind of like say, let me see if I can unpin myself, and there we go, add pin. There we go. Look, now you get the two of us. So anyway, if you'd like to introduce yourself, say hello, and
Absolutely, but I'm very shy and retiring. I don't like talking very much, so please forgive me.
well, great to see that you've sorted out the Educational Life logo there, which is a centre screen.
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, thank you for introducing me, Simon. Yeah, obviously John from Educational Life. So just to clarify, the CIC stands for Community Interest Company, not what Simon attempted to say. Yeah, and yeah, it was it October? Was it really 3 months ago? Oh wow, okay.
It was.
So yeah, I went out on one of the walks, absolutely got it. We sat under the pier in Deal, and the power of sitting there and doing nothing was quite incredible, really. Yeah, it was obviously from that moment the discussion evolved and moved forward, and we said, well, why don't you bring the walks under Educational Life, and then we can go for funding. And yeah, here we are. So obviously we've now talked about me joining in the Thursday night chats, and we'll bring along some bits and bobs. So one of the things that we do at Educational Life is shout about good news. So we only talk about good news. There's no negative news in Educational Life land, because there's plenty of that in all the other media. So we just want to promote the good things that go on, because at the end of the day, there's not enough talk of good things. Most of us talking about parties that should or shouldn't have happened, or maybe that was a party, or maybe it wasn't. Who knows? But that's all negative. So we want to talk about the good things. You know, we talk about many of the schools. We do lots of reports on pretty much anything really. So some of that we will bring to the event every week, and just, you know, maybe if there's one or two things we'll talk about, if that's okay. And yeah, obviously when Simon can't be here, I'm more than happy to take over and see what happens.
That's it. I mean, maybe have a PowerPoint or something with some other stories that the educational life have been focusing on. If you actually go onto social media, Facebook especially, then there are generally one or two posts most days.
Yeah, at least one or two. Normally more like 4 or 5 different articles a day.
So in fact, I believe I can get a badge for being one of Educational Life's biggest fans. Facebook keeps telling me I could, and I have to admit I'm not quite sure what the benefit is, but it must mean that me and Educational Life are doing a lot of liking,
I guess so,
or something. So which is pretty cool. So anyway, Educational Life is one, but it just goes to point. You know, the walks that we do, when we get people out on them, things happen, and so it's been really cool. Obviously, we'll still be doing the ones that we kind of like normally do. And it's really exciting, actually. We've literally, the last few days, we've finally got the simonpollard.uk website is up. It's out there. If you type simonpollard.uk into Google, you will find me. There is a simonpollard.co.uk. That's not me. The bloke's got the same name, but he looks totally different and he does different stuff. But if you go on there, and we've still got some bits and pieces to update. We want to just slightly juggle the experience pages, but we've got 4 main centres for walks at the moment for this year. So there's the Hare and Hounds, which we're based at with a fellow called Luca, who came out in the walks. He was been quite instrumental in some of the changes, and he's been a really good supporter of it for our walks. We've got the ones at Doe Church. Doe Church is the most amazing place. It's a restored old church in a most beautiful wooded valley, and they've done it in a real kind of traditional nostalgic view of our potential past. You know, when you go in there must be 50 plus candles. You know, it's sheepskins and there's straw on the floor. It really does feel like you're walking back 1,000 years in time. So that's pretty cool. And we also go around Westbeer Lake, which is kind of to the northwest of Canterbury. That's one of the old gravel pits that they used when they took all the gravel out of the ground to make all those concrete sea defences that our coasts are smothered in. That's really, really cool. And also at White Horse Wood, which is at the top of the A249 on the North Downs Way. So they're pretty cool. And what you can also do, if you've got a venue that you like, this is pure sales pitch, mine. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to be even subtle about it, absolutely blatant about it. Then you can actually book a season pass, which is cheaper than going to all 4 walks separately, which is cool. And of course, you can buy me book. You could also become a supporter of this show. That would be pretty cool as well. So go in and have a look. simonpollard.uk, check it out. John's actually put the link up now, which is brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. But yeah, check it out, spread the word. Because obviously the more people we can get in here, the more stories we can feature, the more good news we can share, which is really cool. And the more people that come out on the walks in whatever capacity. But also, when we get this grant funding in place, if there's people that you know that are in a disadvantaged situation or can't get out, then it may well be that through that charitable enterprise, we can help them out. It was really interesting. You hear about these conversations. We had a meeting with a local district council, and we were asking for a certain amount of money. And they said, no, you need to be all asking for 4 times that amount. And I went, wow. And John kind of like went, wow. So the fun part is going to be, you know, helping as many people as we can. So it's all about just getting people out and just celebrating what we can do and how we can help people. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Now, I'm going to really run over. So I'm going to save the autobiography of a yogi for next week, because actually in some ways it's actually more relevant to next week's show, because as we say, we're going back, the video that we were going to show wasn't relevant to today. But so I went back, and if you remember the video that I did in Loch Glass, we went to Scotland in August. Incidentally, the Loch Glass video is now up on YouTube in its entirety in one complete show. So you can go and check that out if you'd like to. But this is another series of videos that came from that. We actually spent 3 days on the Isle of Arran. And on the middle day, I got to go up to walk up towards Ashdale Falls. And it was one of those days where I just needed to get out into the countryside and have some time on my own. Not that you're ever alone when you're in the countryside. You're never alone in the countryside. And this is part one. This is the trip up, if you like. There's some interesting natural observations. Check out the hydrangeas because they're different in Scotland. I'll tell you why afterwards. There's one or two others there. But next week, there's a really interesting philosophical discussion point. I think I'm going to leave it on that basis. You need to remember that one, and the autobiography of a yogi. And I would just think, one thing I will say is that the fella has some very interesting observations, beliefs about birth and death. You know, we always think about that journey between birth and death, but he's talking about the journey between death and birth. And I find that really interesting. So I'm going to leave that one kind of hanging on the cliff for next week. But this is part one of Ashdale Falls. Incidentally, you don't see the falls in this one. They're going to be in we might be in next week, but probably the episode after that. So here we go. Screen sharing once again. Ashdale Falls.
Never let you go.
So here I am. I'm on the trail to Ashdale Falls. Apparently there's an Iron Age hill fort up here. There are giants' graves, there are cairns, waterfalls, red squirrels, who knows, all kind of things. But you know what? I'm so looking forward to getting off the beaten track and hopefully lose a few people, not that I've got any with me, and enjoy a little bit of calm connection with our natural world. Come with me and let's see what we find. So, foxgloves, belladonna, digitalis. It's the end of August, and it just goes to show that the Isle of Arran in Scotland, all the plants are a little behind where they are in Kent, down at home. Because at home, foxgloves are long finished. And look, who's come to say hello? This is white-tailed bumble. Isn't it wonderful how nature has a tendency to give us the most amazing gifts? And quite often, just when we start looking. Wow.
Isle of Arran. You can see the yellow right the way across the fields. Now ragwort is poisonous. You know, it's to the point where it's notifiable. Horses should not eat ragwort because it doesn't do them any good. In fact, it can all end up very, very badly. But if your main defence is being poisonous to other creatures, then it makes an awful lot of sense to eat something that's poisonous. Now these caterpillars are the caterpillars of the Cinnabar moth, and they're orange and black, and that basically means I'm bad, don't eat me. And the reason why we see the red and black moths in the daytime is because obviously if there's caterpillars, they've spent their entire time eating ragwort, they're also going to be poisonous. And they're the most beautifully coloured caterpillars and moths. So whenever you see ragwort, that's this big yellow, almost kind of daisy-like looking flower, stop and have a look, because it just might have some Cinnabar moth caterpillars on it. So I'm on the path up to Ashdale Falls. We're up above Whiting Bay. Now right in the background there you can see some mountains. The tallest one is Goat Fell. It's the tallest mountain on the Isle of Arran. If you look down you can see the village and the coast, and in the background is Holy Isle. Holy Isle is largely uninhabited except for a Buddhist retreat and some lighthousemen's cottages. In the background you can see the mainland. And we understand that whilst typical this year, days like today are usually few and far between. The gods are smiling.
Never let you go.
There you go, lovely sunny day in Scotland where you can see the mainland from the island. It's weird actually, when the day before we went over to the island, we were actually on the beach and the island was kind of shrouded in mist, but you could see the peaks and the hills, and it did look really kind of mythic, kind of spooky, kind of enchanted, and that was really, really cool. So yeah, there you go. So the next episode, we actually go up to the Giant's Graves. And as I say, there's some interesting philosophical things that occurred to me that I included in the narration that was there. So yeah, so interestingly, one of the reasons, we really do want to try and get this broadcast on YouTube, because on YouTube you can have a far vaster or bandwidth, or for whatever phrase, and actually include videos that have got much more data in them, which is why, so for Zoom we have to kind of like squash them as much as we possibly can, which is why they get a little bit jumpy on occasions. But as far as I'm aware at the moment, there's a real lag between the video and me talking, and much as that might not be too bad, it's actually a real pain. So, and as far as I'm aware, most of the software is kind of quite expensive. So there's either two ways we do this. One is we get so many people coming along and paying a subscription that we can afford to buy the expensive software, or two, we have to find another way of doing it. And I'm not techie enough yet to have actually sussed it. And to be fair, nobody who's techie who I've asked yet has managed to suss it. So should you know anyone seriously techie who knows a cheap, simple, easy way of swapping between videos and live feed on YouTube, we'd love to know, because if we get on YouTube, I haven't got to dumb down on my videos quite so much, and they'll be slightly better quality. So, and I'm also on my shopping list. I want to get a gimbal, which is one of those things you hold your phone in and it stops it going up and down jiggery pokery. Now I'm quite good at walking around looking like a right plonker, holding my camera, but it will be better when I get a gimbal. Unfortunately, my shaver's bust yesterday, so I had to buy a new shaver, and there's my gimbal money gone on my head. But we'll get there. We'll get there, bits and pieces at a time. Thank you very much indeed, Dee, for your lovely comments. I'm really pleased about that. Again, please spread the word. Let's get the word out there. So next week, I haven't got a clue apart from part 2 of Glen Ashdale Falls. As I said in that video, you never know what gifts nature's going to give you. But just maybe, I mean, I'm out with John and Claire and a fellow called Chris on Saturday. Maybe we'll see something that will stand up and say, film me. And if it does, then we'll get some film of it and we'll bring it out next week. Who knows what will happen. But you know what? Come along anyway, because if nothing else, I'll try and do some at least interesting waffle. And I think the week after that might be February, and then John's on the kind of like backup crew. So backup crew, no, he won't be the backup crew, he'll be the crew. So anyway, that's it. Once again, thank you so much for coming. And it's, yeah, I love these, which is why we still do them. And we'll get it up on YouTube probably on Monday. Life is a bit mental at the moment, which is why no posts tomorrow for social media. I haven't had time to do them, but you know, we'll get it together. So thank you very, very much for coming. It's been a pleasure, and see you again soon. Thank you.